The interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. The veteran's name is Harold Koeplin. They were born on May 8th, 1926, and served in World War II and the Korean conflict. He achieved the rank of First Lieutenant. We're recording this on November 19th, 2013. I am Cole Hawkins, and I'm conducting this interview, no relation. So, where are you from originally?
Originally from Bay City, Michigan. That's where I was born, but raised in Saginaw, Michigan.
All right. Where did you, or what caused you to join?
I was drafted in 1944, and I did my basic training at Camp Robinson, Arkansas, and that started in August of 1944. And then going through basic training, and then I was on the Queen Elizabeth with 15,000 other soldiers. Up and we were sent to Europe and got there around January the 1st.
All right. And from there, I guess your first...
Okay, then from there we was involved in the Ardennes, or what they call the Battle of the Bulge. And from there we went into the Rhineland of Germany and then into Central Europe. And I was wounded on March 24th, 1945.
Did this cause you to return home, or how severe was the injury?
The injuries, well, it was a mortar shell, and another fellow by the name of Santella was in a foxhole with me when it occurred. And at that time, it was the morning when we crossed the Rhine River, and there was a few machine gun nests at that time that had to be eliminated. But we expected the Germans to fire back, or set up where they would advance back toward us. And at that time, the mortar shell came on in, and we were sent back to the field hospitals, and from there they flew us back to France.
And how much time did you spend in France? And I guess
I was in a general hospital until it was May 8th in 1945, which was at that time was the war was ended there in Europe. It was what they would call, it was at that time was, well anyhow, it was May 8th, 1926 when it ended, which was on my birthday.
Wow. Must have been a great birthday present.
Correct.
Alrighty. Well, is there anything else you'd want to cover about the battle specifically, or would you?
Well, the only thing that there was one incident though that I still will never forget. It was toward the end of the Battle of the Bulge, because I think the Battle of the Bulge started on February 15th or 16th, and that overall that campaign was over around the end of January, as I recall. But I got to a point where, being in the front lines, I became ill. It was the flu, and I was cold. I was overall, I just felt lousy, and they sent me into a field hospital. And at the field hospital, I think it was a former school or whatever it was. There was quite a group of veterans in there with various aches or pains or being wounded or whatever it was. And all of a sudden there was quite a commotion, and in walks, they brought a small fella in there, and we looked on up, was Mickey Rooney. And they put Mickey right next to the bunk to me, And all I can say is those Army nurses, were enthralled with Mickey being there. And I had my back rubs also like Mickey did. So it was just it was just sort of a nice type of a thing going on. And then after that, they flew me back into the General Hospital there on the other side of Paris. So that was one event I really enjoyed.
Definitely an interesting story. So I guess the return home, that must have been a great experience.
Yeah, we were when we came back was on the Queen Mary, but with the atom bomb, we were scheduled. I was with Company K, 120th Infantry Division, and I believe we were scheduled to go to Japan if the war hadn't ended in Japan. But then again, the atomic bomb, there were a couple of them there, they dropped there in Japan, and that ended the war. So I was in the military, I was there in the Army until it was May in 1946 when I ended my service at that time. And at that time, I wanted to go to college, where I enrolled at Michigan State, and after that.
All right. I guess from there I'm assuming graduated from Michigan State, and then
Yeah, I graduated from Michigan State, and then I went into ROTC and got a commission there. And there again, I was from that standpoint, because I graduated in the hospitality field at Michigan State. And so then I spent time at Fort Lee, and then they sent me out to Fort Lawton, Washington, in which I was in charge of all the mess halls, and there at Fort Lawton, that's the state of Washington.
okay.
And from there I was released or discharged.
All right. During that time, after your discharge, did you, I guess, seek work elsewhere, or?
Yeah, and at that time, after I received my release, and then I got an opportunity, and I went to work for GM at General Motors Institute in Flint, Michigan. I spent 35 years there.
Okay. So, I guess in regards to the Korean War.
Oh, the Korean War, I spent it all at stateside.
Okay.
And due to the fact I was wounded, there in World War II, I know there was a special thing they had done for individuals that had been injured. And so I spent, I think it was about 17, 18 months here in the United States before they gave me, released me or discharged me.
Okay. So, I guess looking back on it, did you stay in contact with some friends from the military?
No,
or?
not. Yes, I did. I had a very good friend by the fellow by the name of Leslie Gick, who I went to college with at Michigan State, and he became a colonel. He was a paratrooper, and he was a state senator there in Michigan, and he has passed away, and God bless his heart. And so he's the only one I stayed in contact with. I did with the friends I had when I went to high school, which was at Saginaw Arthur Hill. I had quite a few, nice friends and good friends that I chummed around with, but they've all passed away at the present time.
So, I guess while you were there, is there any other specific incidences when you were actually deployed that you can think of that may be worth sharing?
No, not at the present time, except the fact that the individual by a name I was in a foxhole with, he he had there when we crossed the Rhine, and we were on the move or on the attack. He had cleaned out 2 machine gun nests, and then there was other things that he did, and he got the not the Medal of Honor, but the next award underneath the Medal of Honor, a Distinguished Service Cross.
Okay.
And he was from Philadelphia, and he well deserved it, the honor that he received.
So when you arrived for the Battle of the Bulge, did you actually land on Normandy, or?
No. The Normandy was on June 6, 1944,
Okay.
and I didn't go. I was drafted till August. Well, that summer I was drafted, and then I went into service in August 1944 and went through basic training.
Okay.
So I got there when the Battle of Bulge was still going on.
Okay.
As soon as we left the ships, and that we landed in France, and right after that they sent us to the front, and I was at that time it was a Company K, the 120th Infantry Division, was the 30th Division, which was part, I believe at that time, it was from the part of the National Guard they had here in South Carolina, but that's all I can remember from that standpoint.
Did you so when you were there, I guess the overall morale, was it, you would feel it being pretty strong, or?
Well, I'll tell you what, you're always under stress when you're in combat, and so when we did periods of time, they sent us back for recreation and things like that until we went into the next campaign, and we had a period of time that we were stationed in Holland before we advanced into the Rhineland, and after that the Rhineland we crossed the Rhine River, so that I can recall, and but there again the individuals I got to know, I really enjoyed being with them. I still remember one individual who was from Boston, a Jewish fellow. He had an economics degree, I think, from the Boston College, and he and I got along real well, from that standpoint. And we enjoyed each other, and we were in the same platoon.
So how many people were in your platoon? Do you remember?
Let's see, we had 36 to 40 individuals within the platoon, I think. Each squad had 12 men in.
Okay. And then I guess a company is what's larger than the platoon.
Oh yeah, the company. I think there was 3 or 4 platoons, as I recall.
Okay. When you were there, what specific role did you have? I know you, I guess you were on the front lines, but...
I was just a rifleman.
Rifleman.
A grunt.
So what type of rifle did you carry?
It was an M1.
So I assume the time you spent there, most nights were spent under the stars, so to speak.
Is what?
Most nights you spent there were under the stars, so to speak. You were kind of out and the foxholes.
Most of the time we were, well, with the exception of the time I spent in the hospital, and there outside of Paris, as I can recall, and but they handled us very well. But I still remember that I was in a room where it was sort of a big area, and they had one soldier there, one GI, that had his leg shot off, and the doctors would come on in, and they would clean, this area around the leg and everything like that, where it was shot up, shot off, but every time they opened that up, you could smell. It was very putrid, make you all of a sudden you want to throw up. And but I'm trying to think of there's some type of a worm they use to eat the dead flesh.
A maggot?
Huh?
Is it a maggot?
Maggots, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, they use maggots to eat the dead flesh around. And then you could smell it, the whole, you could hold the whole area. So I can imagine how it was, from the standpoint that we saw, when going through the military and dead folks, lying there on the ground and everything, and seeing what's happened here in the Philippine Islands now, and the stench, and you start wanting to really cover your nose.
I can imagine it'd be difficult. So, I guess a decent amount of your friends from high school, they were drafted as well?
Yeah, but they were drafted about a year afterwards, and I did. I was a year older than the friends I had, so they went, all of them. If there was, I think, 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them, they went in the military a year after I did, and at that time, both the war in Japan, the European ETO was over, so they spent mostly, going through 2 years and then going to college.
So what emotions did you feel when you were drafted?
Is what?
What emotions did you feel when you were originally drafted?
Well, it was, I really didn't want to. You knew that was there, but you didn't know if you're going to be coming back or not, based upon that. But there's one thing I always did. I had a New Testament Bible in my left pocket, and I wanted the good Lord to be with me from that standpoint. And I was very blessed in that way. Sure, I got wounded, but it had, they had a lot of. In fact, I still have in my right side, way down, I still have a pellet there. And when I had my knee replaced, they found it from the standpoint when the X-ray showed up on it. So I still have a little symbol from the World War II, by combat there, and so that's how it goes. But I came out well from that standpoint.
So obviously you received the Purple Heart. And
For the Purple Heart and all the other brass that goes with it.
Cool. So I guess when you first came back, you went home to Michigan, or?
Yeah, came home to Michigan, and then I think I spent 1 semester when it was in a junior college, and I cared less for it. I just was anxious to get to Michigan State and go to school there. And so I spent 4 years there.
So I guess the feeling of being home must have been quite a relief.
The what?
The feeling of being home must have been quite a relief.
Oh yeah. But it was at that time I had a job, with the city of Saginaw, till I went to Michigan State, and I spent part-time there at the junior college. But all my friends were still in the service because they were a year later than I was, and but then again we all got together when I entered Michigan State there in 1947. I graduated there in 51.
So what years was it that during the Korean War, I guess, that you were active?
Yeah, I was, what there was, let's see, I graduated Michigan State in 1951, and then I started my second career there in the service. It was in September of 1951, and then I left the service was in January 1953.
Okay. And you did the ROTC program.
You're right, correct.
Was there a sense of pride that you felt whenever you were actually serving your country?
When we serve our country, we always have great pride in what we do from that standpoint. And I know that all of the veterans that are going through, they've gone through Korea, Vietnam, and then that over there in Iraq, when they had to go into Kuwait, clean that on up, and then the war in Iraq, and then what's going on in Afghanistan, and then these soldiers that come back that have all the problems that they have now, but there's a pride there, and God bless their heart from that standpoint. And all the wounded veterans that, I'll tell you what though, Cole, there's quite a difference that those individuals have gone through, like they're going in Vietnam, also from the standpoint they're in Iraq, Afghanistan. Our opponents were Germans, and you could tell by the uniform that they wore that they were Germans. But the ones that were in Vietnam, they didn't know who was friend or who was foe. It's the same thing in Iraq or Afghanistan, never knowing and from friend and foe. It was, as far as I'm concerned, it's a little bit more difficult type of a war that they experienced than we did there in Europe. The same thing would happen over there in Japan. They know who the Japanese were, and based upon the uniforms they had, the way they looked, and everything like that. The Germans, you could tell by their uniforms, and made all the difference as far as I'm concerned. And experience from our standpoint, the European ETO campaign, as those that have gone after the campaigns that war campaigns that went on after the European area.
I agree. So when people say that your generation was the greatest that's ever lived, do you find that as being true, or?
Yes, I really do. Because the GIs that came back at that time, they wanted to either go to college, get an education, which was quite available, the GI Bill, and build homes, build families, and all that. It's a different culture these days, is what we went through, what they say the greatest generation. It was a great generation, getting jobs and all that.
So I guess moving forward, how would you look back on your whole experience, I guess, as a whole?
The way I look at it, It was a great experience. It had its being single. I didn't have to worry about a family or anything such as that. It was, to me, very meaningful. At times I would say I loved it. Other times, no. Depends on where I was at the time. But the comradeship was just great, from that standpoint. We had a job to do. We did it, period. So one other things I want to say, Cole, that there were individuals that I have to take my hat off that did so many things that were so great from the standpoint of what they did above duty. Like I can remember the gentleman Santella that got in the same foxhole with me and what he accomplished that morning after we crossed the Rhine River. And I got to take my hat off to him from that standpoint. And he did a great job. And well, both of us, good Lord was with us. That we weren't wounded more seriously, we both had shrapnel skin deep in many areas. I had 3 operations on my left arm, and after they sent us to the field hospital, I do not know what happened to Santella, from that standpoint, until we got back to our unit, after the war ended there on May 8th, there in 1945.
And you did in fact find out that he...
Yes, he came back. He was fine. And one thing though, when we opened up our mail, and since he was a married man, got a letter from the standpoint that his wife had died during childbirth. And so that was a real downer. And God bless his heart. So I don't know if he's still alive or not, but I got to take my hat off to him for what he did.
Very commendable.
Yep, correct.
Well, sir, I'd like to thank you for serving our country, and I'd like to thank you for giving
I
me...
appreciate it very much, and I so thankful in so many ways. And the Lord was with me and blessed me accordingly, and I thank you very much for the interview.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Right.
All right, take care.
Yeah.